from the Equal Opportunity Office. You've heard it many times, and we will continue being consistent. So I've been asked to read this. The university extends a sincere welcome to the candidate. We hope that you find our community hospitable. The open forum is an opportunity for you to address the topic the search committee has asked you to address. It is also an opportunity for interested members of the community to ask you questions about your candidacy for this position. Audience members will have the opportunity to provide feedback to the search committee by the way of a form containing questions about their assessment of your qualifications for this position. So it's this form. I handed them out. If I missed you, they're here. Just come up and get them. They're also online. Thank you also to the folks who have taken the time to attend this open forum. This is an important position for the University of Montana. Your involvement is important. Please remember that all searches, including this search, are governed by university equal opportunity policies. Discrimination based on race, color, religion, national origin, creed, service in the military, political ideas, sexual orientation, sex, age, marital or family status, or disability is prohibited. As such, it is generally not acceptable to ask questions which require candidates to disclose personal information about these protected categories. I, as facilitator of this forum, find a question to be inappropriate. I'll ask the candidate to not respond and give the audience member opportunities to rephrase their question. This is not meant to embarrass anyone, but simply to ensure that we follow the required policies and law as proceeded with the search. As a logistical matter, I ask the audience member not to record this session with any visual or audio recording devices, and I've asked Ron back there not to record the prayer, and he's done that. Okay, now, to warm up the crowd a little bit, you know, just get you, it's Friday, you know, you're tense. I got a few STEM jokes. Again, this has to do with chemistry. You know, I did math, now I do chemistry. Are you ready? Yeah, raise your hand. Please don't tell a joke. Okay, so did you hear about the chemist? His name's Ed, by the way, who is reading a book on helium, and he just couldn't put it down. You know, because helium floats. Ooh, one more to warm you up. I can see I didn't really get you. Okay, loosen up. Here we go. I'm getting the crowd worked up for you, Aaron Thomas. So, the other one is, why are chemists really good at solving problems, do you think? It's because they have all the solutions. Ooh, that got him, my favorite. Yes, I'm here till tomorrow, and then I'm gone again. So anyway, do you all have any questions so far before we begin? Any questions? Yeah. I do, but I don't want to take all the time up. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our council members. If you're from a tribal council, will you please stand up, identify yourself, and tell us which council that you're representing.
Dana Wilson, I represent the Crow tribe, that's the state of branch.
Rusty Tatsy, I serve as the vice chairman for the Blackfeet tribe. Actually, I graduated also from here in '83. Used that experience as a teacher for 25 years back home, so I implemented what I learned. And in 17 years of teaching, those students got the vote, so I made it on the council. Okay, let's see. Is there anybody? Members of the search committee, if you please stand and tell the audience who you are and what department you're in. I'd appreciate that. Go ahead. Start right here with our chair.
Liz Putnam, Pharmacy School.
Keith Parker, Pharmacy. Steve Ludnell, Biology.
Mary Kaminsky, Graduate School.
Okay. If I missed anybody else, I don't mean to. And Ed Galindo. I'm from the University of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, in Natural Resource Department, and have several other projects going. I should explain that. But my passion is one we have at the University of Idaho called iSTEM, Indigenous STEM, which is geared at getting Native people their PhD and Masters in STEM area. We have about 10 students that I work with. Aaron's on a lot of those committees, as is Angelique Eaglewoman, which we meet monthly. She's in law and is our law professor. Okay, without further ado, I'm gonna let Aaron address our group. Again, the idea here was for a candidate to come, stand before a Native family, and explain who they are, what their vision is, what they want to do. And I appreciate the passion we've had with these questions. I really do like that. Keep that up. And if there's one that we can't talk about, I'll redirect that passion in the best way I can. But it's good to see you here, and keep that passion of asking these candidates the best questions that we can. Okay, without further ado, I'll introduce Dr. Aaron Thomas. Come on up.
Well, now I feel like I got to tell jokes too, but I'll save those for another time. Well, Ya'at'e, my name is Aaron Thomas. I am Diné Navajo, originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was born to a Vilagana, my mother, who is Caucasian. I was born to the Tsinajini clan, my father's clan, the Blackstreak Wood people. Currently, I am a professor, an associate professor at the University of Idaho in chemical engineering. I've been there since 2001, so I've told others I'm slowly moving from rookie to veteran status over there at the University of Idaho. And I've taught all levels in chemical engineering. I've taught freshmen, sophomore, juniors, seniors, and also graduate students as well over there. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit. They read this disclaimer here, not supposed to ask personal questions and all that. Well, I'm going to tell you my personal story, so that'll save you from asking questions, and I'll just kind of lay it out for you anyway, because I think it's an important one. Because any journey is usually a long journey, and any journey usually begins not with you, but with those that have come before you. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about how I kind of got to the position where I am, and of course, for me, that starts with my parents. So my mom, she was essentially the daughter. She was a preacher's kid and a missionary's kid. My grandfather was missionaries to the Navajos, and so that's where my mom and my dad met. So she lived in Gallup for quite a while. She grew up out east, but then moved to Gallup. Lived in Cortez, Colorado for a little bit too, so she's very familiar with the Southwest. So that's where they met. She has her education in English. She got her bachelor's degree from Grand Canyon College. My father took a little more circuitous route onto him, and probably maybe this you can relate to a little bit more. But he was born on the reservation, and I'll tell you a little bit about where he was. So he was born in a place near Tohatchee. Of course, Tohatchee is where the trading post was, where they lived. Essentially, if you go there now, it's off of Highway 666, which, as you can imagine, is a very dangerous highway. Okay, I think they have since changed the name, but it is just a 2-lane road from Gallup to Shiprock, and it is not a very good 2-lane road. Not one of those you want to be driving at night. As you can imagine, even though it's paved, it's just you just don't want to be riding on it. And again, Route 666. So they grandparents live about 5 miles off the main road, and it's one of those, it's like the fourth wash on the left, right? So you have to have your 4-wheel drive just to get out there. And so if you look here on the map, I put a little star of approximately where it is. So Gallup, New Mexico, it kind of borders Arizona and New Mexico. You go straight up Route 666, and just outside of the Chuska Reservoir is then where they live. So Dad was born in Hogan. He teases people. He says the reason why he's so dark brown is because when he was born, his parents dropped him on their dirt floor and rolled him around a little while to make sure he was the proper color. So born in a Hogan, it was probably this one too. So for those of you who are not familiar with a Hogan, 6 sides, usually made out of wood. This one actually has rock on the outside with the mud roof. It is 1 room. The stove sits in the center of that room. All the beds then are on the outside. They built a little porch, if you want to call it a porch, kind of out in the front there, and they kind of have their places where they do their cooking out there. No running water, no electricity, and they lived here until about 10 years ago. And so until about 10 years ago, then they moved to a trailer. The trailer still doesn't have running water, but it has electricity. So what was my father's job when he was younger? His job was herding sheep. So that was his primary responsibility. That's what he did, was he was out to herd sheep. And as you can see, he had to start young. So him and his cowboy hat and his horse out there herding sheep until he had to go off to boarding school. So he went off to the local boarding school when he was, of course, about 5 years old, and he hated it. And you can imagine why he hated it. They wouldn't let him speak his language. And the other thing he says he hates, even to this day, is whenever they gave him something on his plate to eat, he had to eat everything that was on the plate, including the stick of butter that was on his plate. And he hated just having to eat that. And they would check, too. They'd make sure you ate everything off that plate. So they said there's two things you could do with that butter. One was either try to hide it in your milk carton, and the other is to take it and put it right under the table. And hopefully they wouldn't find it. But even to this day, he doesn't have butter on anything, so he just hates it. He hated it so much that after his being in kindergarten, he ran away. He was done. He couldn't be at that school any longer. So you can imagine a 5-year-old, and I'm sure it was miles from the boarding school to where his house was, and he just ran away. He took off. So Shanella, my grandmother, then kept him home for a year, and then he finally went back. And so he was at boarding school until he was in about 6th grade. So my grandmother, her main role, well, she was a weaver. So she wove rugs, and some beautiful rugs too. And in some ways, I can't wait for my parents to give me her rugs that they have in there, but I'll have to wait a little bit longer because they're up in their house. But I have a dibs on a few. She did this for a long time, used natural dyes, of course, for the rugs. And she did this for a while until she kind of developed arthritis into her hands, and she couldn't do it anymore. So before we get to this, I'll talk a little bit more about background. So my father then decided he wanted to leave the reservation and go to school someplace else. So he finished high school, went actually to Laterno University, which is in Texas, got his welding engineering degree, and from there he said he won the only lottery that he ever entered, and that was the draft lottery. So I think he said his number was like 4 or something like that. So he won that lottery and was in the Army for a couple years. And that's where I came around. So I was actually born on an Army base, Fort Hood, Texas. We lived there for a little while, moved to Houston, where he got his job after he was out of the Army, over to El Paso, lived there for a little while, and then moved up to Albuquerque. So I essentially, most of what I remember is in Albuquerque. Spent kindergarten and 1st grade in El Paso, and the rest of my schooling then was in Albuquerque, junior high, rest of elementary, and also high school. So from there, my dad liked to fix things. Whether or not he knew what he was doing was unknown. He sounded like he knew what he was doing, okay, but I think he had this idea, and I kind of had the same idea, that I can figure this out. No matter what it is, we can figure it out. Whether it's duct tape or whether some other method, we can fix this. And so I think I got a lot of those problem-solving skills from him. He always kind of dove into whether the vehicles or something around the house, we're going to figure this out and we're going to fix this. So I decided then to go to school, go to college. I think for me, I was fortunate because there was almost no question, at least for me, that I was going to college. It was just kind of dependent on where. Well, I was doing pretty good in school. I was doing well in math. I was always drawn towards the math, and I knew at one time I wanted to be an engineer when I was in high school. I just didn't know what type of engineer. Well, I liked chemistry, and so I thought I would put the two together, chemistry and engineering. I'd be a chemical engineer. That would be good, and that's what I went to school in. So was accepted into Stanford. I actually had 2 choices, either go to Stanford. My other choice I thought is I wanted to go into the nuclear engineering program for the Navy. And that sounded really cool because I wanted to do later on was to fly jets, because I thought that would just be one of the most fun things in the world. And my dad sat me down and said, "Son, you're going to Stanford. There's no way you're going into the military." And so I said, okay, so I'll head over there. And it was a great experience. Spent 4 years at Stanford in chemical engineering, decided that I wasn't quite yet ready to work. Wanted to go do some more schooling. I actually had some internships while I was an undergraduate. And essentially what those internships taught me is I didn't want to work in those companies. That might seem sort of odd for some of you, but it's something that you learn. I did an internship once at Intel and decided I didn't want to work at Intel. I did an internship once at a national lab, That taught me I didn't want to work in a national lab. So I wasn't ready to go to work yet. So I decided I would go back to school. And so I was going to go hang out somewhere for 2 years, just get my master's. That's all I wanted, because I wasn't quite sure what it is I wanted to do. So settled on going to the University of Florida for some very major reasons, the sun. So there wasn't really anything academic about it really at all. When I went out to visit, it was sunny. They took me out golfing. They had a great athletic program. I thought, oh, I can hang out here for 2 years. Well, 2 years turned to 5 out in Florida, and instead of just getting my master's, I decided to go ahead and get my PhD. And on my way to my PhD, I TA'd a class. And during that class, I would have students come to me all the time. And I found out I enjoyed immensely helping those students. I enjoyed helping them learn some of the topics that were difficult to them in class. I even had a chance to teach classes for a while too, and thoroughly enjoyed that as well. And I still remember one student especially, he struggled and struggled and struggled in this class. And I sat him down, and I was trying to figure out ways to tell him, and I had an idea. Okay, think of it this way. And I know most teachers have this moment, I remember this one specifically. You could just see it click, finally, in his head. And he got a little smirk on the side of his mouth. And he was almost a little bit nervous because I think he finally got it. And he big old broad grin later on. He says, I understand now how this works. Oh, that was amazing. And so then I knew then that I wanted to continue this. I wanted to go down this road and continue in education. So I knew my PhD then was to go teach, to become an academic faculty. So I got my PhD in chemical engineering. Looked around for jobs that would be in my field. Settled. I had to get out of Florida. Grew up in Albuquerque. 10% humidity was a humid day. Living in Florida when it's 90% humidity and 95 degrees outside, that was rough. That was very rough on me. Expecting the sun to go down and things to cool off, that did not happen. You go out at midnight, it's still 90% humidity and 95 degrees outside. So I enjoyed my time there, but I had to get back to the mountains. I really did. The beach was nice, but sand gets in everything. Your toes, you're just everywhere. And it's just, again, it's nice, but I was ready to get back to the mountains and to the lakes and to the rivers. So settled on the University of Idaho. It seemed like a great program, and one of the main reasons why I enjoyed that program is not only were they fixated on your research, but they were very much focused on undergraduate education. And I was happy to see that. Because I've seen how some professors are, where teaching the class is a nuisance, right? I'm only here because I have to. I really have some research work that I should be doing, but they're making me do this, so I'm going to teach anyway. And that bothered me, because I had some of those teachers. So it really I was really relieved to see at the University of Idaho, they were still focused on their undergraduate. The graduates and research, again, was also important, but they didn't lose that focus. So was able to make it then to the University of Idaho in 2001, straight out of graduate school, and have been there ever since. Went through the whole 10-year process, which is quite an experience, and I've tried to, as much as possible, involve myself really in native STEM education. So for me, I almost feel like it's almost like an obligation. So people have helped me get to where I currently am. And in some way, I feel obligated, and not in a negative way, but in a good way, to help fellow Native students. So because people have helped guide me, given me the opportunities, I feel like I need to do the same. And so it's been one of my passions, really, is STEM education, especially among our Native students. I would like every one of you to be a chemical engineer, but I know that's not possible. Okay, there's certain people that like different areas, and that's fine. But I'd really like to see you in the STEM field, whether that's chemistry, whether that's perhaps in health sciences, or whether that's in biology or in forestry, one of those areas, fisheries. That's great. That's where I would like to see you. And so as much as possible, I've tried to involve myself in helping students get into these fields. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about some of the areas that I've been involved in to kind of help Native students, to help them succeed in STEM. One of the first things that I did, since I was one of the very few, I think at the time probably the only Native faculty on campus, was there was quite a few different classes that they wanted taught to the students. Like for example, one of them, and I shared this with a few of you, was they wanted to create a class to help students actually get credit for being a part of the powwow. Because the powwow was a huge undertaking, and if any of you students are helping with that, you probably know exactly what that is like. In fact, when I was a freshman at Stanford, they asked me to be the treasurer for the powwow. And I didn't know much about it, and or being the treasurer. And they said, oh, it'll be no problem. You just sign a few checks and just make sure the book's balanced. And I said, sure, I'll be the treasurer. They didn't tell me they had a $55,000 budget that I had to keep track of, and I'm just a freshman. And it scared the living daylights out of me because I could just see the money just being depleted, having to go out and fundraise and all of that. So another interesting story was so on the weekend of the powwow, they were giving out the prize money. Well, the prize money was about $12,500, and they wanted to give it all out in cash. So guess who had to carry the cash? The treasurer. And guess what? The banks aren't open over the weekend. So guess who has to hold the cash over the weekend? The treasurer. So I had to go to the bank, and I had to unlock, or I had to draw out $12,500, which they put in as you would think, a stereotypical bank bag, like you're robbing a bank, one of those things. And I'm hiding it the whole time, looking around. I'm so concerned that someone's going to steal it. And it was just a nervous wreck the whole week. I had it hidden in my underwear drawer because I thought no one would look there, right? And no one would even want to touch it if I had it hidden in there. And it just made me so nervous. I'll kind of continue along the story because it gets better. So what happened was my roommate and I, we usually never lock our door. It was just always unlocked, and that's just the way we did it. I think we had our wallet stolen once, and we locked it for a week, and then we just kept it unlocked again. I didn't say we were very bright. We just didn't lock the door. Well, I have $12,500 in my underwear drawer, so I decide I need to now start locking my door. The problem is I forgot that I'm doing that, and my roommate was away for that weekend. So I go, and that morning when I'm supposed to go and help out with the powwow, I go and to take a shower. And so I take my shower and I come back and my door's locked. And I'm standing out there in my towel going, oh great, what am I going to do? So I try to find an RA. The RA, this is like 7 in the morning. It's not waking up. There's no one else around, and I'm sitting there in my towel. It's like, how on earth am I going to do this? So I lived on the 2nd floor of the dorm at that time, and I went outside and I looked and our window was open. So I thought, I think I can do this. So I had a pile on picnic tables on top of each other to lead up to my room. I hope there was nobody up that morning because I'm doing all this in my towel, okay? So piling up these picnic tables on top of each other, climbing up on them, get myself into my room, and then I'm better. So I think I learned a few lessons about that. One, don't volunteer for things like that. I'm sorry, I love to tell stories. I have my class tell me stories too. We kind of do this in my class time, so I enjoy the stories they tell. Sometimes I get distracted telling stories too. So they wanted to, at the University of Iowa, they wanted to create a class, give students credit for putting together the powwow. And of course, they needed a professor to do that. And so they asked me, would you be the professor for this class? Well, I'm in chemical engineering, but that's not a problem. I can help them out with this. And we did things like we made sure that they understand, how to fundraise, the logistics of the event, who to talk to in case there's an emergency, these sort of things. And so we did a whole semester to help them prepare to put on the powwow, and we called the class The Business of Powwow. And it actually went pretty well, and we did that for a few semesters, and then they had someone else to kind of take over that class. So there were these challenges that I had to work with as I was working with the students. Other areas that would tend to happen, because I was in chemical engineering and because I would announce that I'm one of those that love math and I love the physics and I love the chemistry, that whenever there was a native student that came and struggled in these areas, they say, well, go talk to Aaron. They would put up their hands. It's like, oh, I can't help you. You go talk to Aaron. And that was fine. I enjoyed when they showed up on my door and saying, I need help. Well, perfect. I'm glad you took that first step. So let's sit down and figure this out. So I tutored a number of native students just in those subjects. So mostly in physics and mostly in the math classes they were taking. We go to the board and I try to make sure, I keep up on them to make sure that they're doing their homework, and really trying to make sure that they get through those classes. And so that was good. So more recently, we've actually been able to do some larger projects with Native students, and what we tend to do now is able to kind of reach out more in the K through 12 area. So as one of the other hats that was kind of bestowed upon me about 3 years ago is I'm the director of the Idaho Space Grant Consortium. And what Space Grant is a higher education program from NASA, Every state has a space grant program, and we're in charge of handing out scholarships and fellowships and enhancing research activity and promoting NASA throughout the entire state of Idaho. So through that, they had this program started about two and a half years ago called the Summer of Innovation. And what the Summer of Innovation was, they wanted to target junior high students. Just in general, they said, we want you to target junior high students and to bring NASA content to both junior high students and the teachers. Well, I most definitely wanted to do this, but I wanted to make sure that we targeted our Native students in the state of Idaho and also the teachers that work on those reservations. Not only that, I wanted to make sure that we traveled to these communities. Now, logistically, it would be easier to have all these students come to us. However, it was better, in my opinion, for us actually to go to them. And the main reason I thought it was better is, one, we needed to go there. I needed to make sure that I was there with them, with some of my students, with my traveling team, to give these space camps or these science camps, both with the students and the teachers. And that proved to be a wonderful experience. So we went to the 4 reservations in Idaho. We also administered some of these to the Hispanic population that exists in southern Idaho, especially with the agriculture. We went to some of the reservations in Utah and actually came up to SKC as well and did a program up there. So what was nice about this is while I was down there, and because the communities are so small, as you can imagine, and out of the way, they were very happy to see us. And we were essentially the talk of the town. So we'd go in the grocery store, and they knew, one, they immediately knew we were strangers, but also they knew why we were there. So, oh, you guys are the space guys. It's like, yes, we're the space guys. We're here doing the space camp with your kids. So I got a chance to talk to community members, to the parents, to tribal elders would come by and see what was going on. To tribal councilmen would also stop by. We got a chance to tell them, this is what we're doing. We're trying to encourage your kids to remain in the STEM fields. We're showing them that some of these things that they can do is really a lot of fun. So if I can get this to go forward, there we go. So some of the projects that we did is we did rockets with the kids. And so who doesn't like rockets? It was a lot of fun. So what we had is we had them do paper rockets. And so you can kind of see you can kind of see the res work here, okay, and that rocket there in the back, if I can scroll back again. So it's lots of tape. We went through, I don't know, 50 to 100 rolls of tape. Tape was like the hit. Everything was taped. So you can see this rocket's taped to the hilt. It has some fins going out, and it's really a high pressure rocket. So they pump it up. I have them pump it up, and then we release a valve, and those rockets would shoot off. And we try to see, okay, how far did it go? Well, we did a little bit of the problem-solving aspect because we did it once, and some of the rockets wouldn't go very far at all, and we tell them, okay, we need you to do this again. What changes would you make now to your rocket? You've seen what other rockets have done. What makes theirs effective, and how can you go and change yours? And so they make changes, and usually they were better. The other thing we did was robotics. And actually we built these small robots, and you can probably hardly see them, but what it was is we had a toothbrush, we had a battery, and your cell phones, when they vibrate, we took out one of those little motors and put it on top of that battery. So that battery, so that motor would spin around and vibrate, and those little toothbrushes would just kind of move around like this. And so that was their little mini robot that they did. And so we did some fun things with this. One of those is we did a sumo wrestling match. And so what we did is I put these all on a plate, and they sometimes put little pipe cleaners on them. And I would say, okay, ready, set, go, and they would wiggle around, and whoever pushed the other one off the plate then would win the sumo match, and they enjoyed that immensely. And so this is a place in Owyhee, the Shoshone-Paiute Reservation, where we worked. We made paper kites, which I thought would never work, but they worked great. So they made these kites out of paper. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, that's aeronautics. So we did aeronautics with the kids as well, and so we started out with kites, then we moved on to airfoils and how those worked. And these are junior high kids, but you would think they were 5 years old, the way they ran out with their paper kites in the wind, and really enjoyed working with those. We took a day where we said, okay, we're going to train like an astronaut. And the way we're going to train like an astronaut is we're going to put you into different groups, and you have different things that you have to do. How many reps of jump rope can you do? How many push-ups can you do? How many sit-ups can you do? We also made sure we kept the reservation in mind. How many free throws can you make? Okay, because once we have natives up in space, there's going to be like those little Nerf hoops, I know, and we'll be playing with those, although it'll be a little bit hard when there's no gravity. But I'm sure we'll figure out a way to make it work. And so what we did with this is we said, okay, whoever wins this Train Like an Astronaut, we're going to go to Mars. Well, Mars happened to be the local cafe. So whoever won whoever group got the most repetitions in all these different areas, we actually took them out to eat that day. And you never seen such a fierce competition among the students to go to the cafe that day. So we headed out to the Mars Cafe. And so what did this do? This was, we had a month from NASA to put all this together, for one thing. So it was a whirlwind. And, being out in some of these areas was a little bit tough. The Oahe Reservation, as with most towns, had no cell phone service and no internet service. One restaurant in the entire town that closed at 3, I think, but they had a grocery store that worked out pretty well. But it was an amazing experience. We got a chance to talk to the entire community. And one thing that they told us when we left is, you guys are coming back. Not, we hope you come back, and if you come back next year, but they specifically told us, you all need to find a way to come back. And we did, and we're still trying, we're still working on that too. We did go back. We went back a couple times with these students. And now, whatever program we want to do with these tribes, they're open to it. We built that relationship with these students, with these communities, with these parents, and they're ready for us to come back. So any project that we now have that we'd like to do, they're welcoming us with open arms, and they want more. They keep asking, what more can you do? What's next? What's next? We want to know what else we can do. Well, one of the things that we were able to do is from these different sites, we selected about 10 students from these different sites, and we took them. Oh, I don't have the picture. We actually took them to see the final shuttle launch. So we took them to Florida. We took them to Cape Canaveral. We took them to see the final Atlantis shuttle launch. And what an amazing experience. And so as you can imagine, some of these kids had never been off the res. Of course, many of them had never been on an airplane before. And so it was just an amazing experience just to get out and see that shuttle launch. And so we had 100 of us out there sweltering in the summer sun. There was always talk that this one wasn't going to go off. It was going to be delayed. And oh man, we went through one delay and it was awful. Ed was out there too. So we saw this shuttle go off with those kids, and that was just an amazing experience. So the other thing we did too, and I should say this was in conjunction with Ed, so I actually focused on the student part of it. Ed really kind of took the lead on working with the teachers. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to give the teachers the NASA curriculum, so that when we left, we would then go to the curriculum that we gave to the teachers they could use in their school year. And some of you may recognize, so we actually, up at SKC, we had Frank. So Frank helped us institute the teacher portion of the program, and what he did, he likened, of course, the flight of an arrow to a rocket. And so trying to bring, of course, the native aspect to some of the science and to what we actually see and what other people do in other areas. So with all these teachers, we gave them some curriculum so that they could use throughout the school year. The other thing that we realized is they actually need materials. So we made sure we actually provided them with the materials to do some of these things too. One of the things that I learned, and it's only because I'm an engineer, I thought it would be no problem. You just give them a list of materials. They'd go to the hardware store, pick those right up, put it right together, no problem. I realized that doesn't happen. Okay, they're not going to go to the hardware store. They're not going to pick these things up, and they're not going to put it together. So what we had to do, what Ed had to do, is actually buy all these parts separately, number each parts, okay, show on the diagram how all the numbers went together, and then give those to the teachers. Then they were more likely to put in, for example, the little rocket launcher that they can then use with their students. So we also had them work with rockets as well. And of course, as you can imagine, they had a blast. They had their own competitions with the rockets. But then they could take this back to the communities. And it's in many of these places, and we've had teachers come back, and we've been back to their communities as well, it's changed their campus. It's changed the way they've looked at STEM. And now they're excited again. they were excited to bring these type of projects back to the students. So they were happy to be able to accept some of this material, accept our help, and again, if we want to do something else, then they're ready. They're ready for us to be there. So that's kind of the junior high level, the K through I guess about 9th grade. But another project that I've been involved in, again along with Ed and I do a lot of things together. He got me in a lot of trouble when he first showed up on campus, because his favorite thing to do his favorite saying to me was, "Aaron, have I got a deal for you?" And I'd be like, "Well, what is it?" "Well, I kind of got you involved in," and I was like, "Oh, great, here we go." But usually most of the things were great. My summer of innovation, and having him do the teachers, that was my payback. He says, "Ed, have I got a deal for you? Guess what you get to do for the rest of your life?" So that's been good. So for high school, one of the things, oh, here's the shuttle launch. Good, I have that picture. So we took some of our Hispanic students, and these are our students from the Coeur d'Alene Reservation, out to see the shuttle launch. We were a little far away. I could sort of point to where the shuttle was, but you'd have to really squint to see it. It is right there. But we could see it perfectly once it went off, and we could feel the rumble too as it left. So talking about high school, so one of the ideas that I have is, I jumped ahead. Oh. There we go. No, I'm not touching. So with high school, one of the things that's, again, one of the ideas I've seen with people is they say, well, we have this program, we're trying to get Native students in this program, but we can't find them. We can't get them, especially in STEM, we can't get students in this program. Well, one of the main reasons for that is there's just not that many. And there's a whole bunch of programs, and they're being pulled in many directions. So one of the things that I kind of got back to do, well, we just have to have more students interested in the STEM fields. And so we're really trying to create that pipeline of students that starts with junior high. So this is kind of high school portion of it, and I'm sure Rachel will recognize this because she does the same program here in Montana, but this is the computer build program. And so for those of you that are not familiar with this, what it is started out at the University of Alaska. They did it with Alaska Native students up there, and it's been a wildly successful program with them. They're trying to actually implement this in other states. Idaho and Montana are a couple of those states where they're trying to do this, and the idea is we have students, high school students this time, build their own computers, and it's from scratch. So there's just a case, and all the other pieces are in boxes around the room, and we tell them, you're going to put together your own computer. And of course, at first, they're skeptical. They don't think that this is even going to be possible, especially, at least it seems to me, the ladies. They're like, well, I'm not technical. I don't know how to do this. Oh, no, don't worry. We'll have you put it together. And we work on it. We just do it bit by bit, piece by piece, and eventually they realize, oh, this isn't so bad. I can actually do this. And the ladies, of course, do great. And then at the very end, I said, well, how many of you would feel comfortable putting together another computer? And they would all raise their hands. How many of you would be comfortable with your own computer, for example, put in new memory? Oh, yeah, no problem. I know where the memory goes. How about if you had to replace a power supply? Oh, yeah, no problem. I can replace a power supply. I know how all this works now. So that's kind of our hook to get them interested in STEM. But we tell them, this computer that you put together can be yours for the low price of 3 classes. And those 3 classes are, you must, upon graduation, complete chemistry, physics, and trigonometry. And if you complete those 3 classes, the computer is then yours. So what's the purpose of this? 1, to keep them interested in STEM. But what people were seeing, and we see this too, and they did in Alaska, is when a lot of the Native students would come on campus, they were behind. They had to take remedial math. They weren't ready in their science classes. And part of the reason they were behind is because they never took those classes when they were in high school, because they weren't required to. And I know how this is. So if your high school requires you to take 2 years of math, how many years of math do you take? 2. That's it. That's all I needed. All I needed was 2 years of math, so that's it. Well, this is some incentive to say, okay, why don't you go beyond those 2 years? Take a 3rd year, or perhaps even a 4th year, so you can at least be done with trigonometry, so that when you step on campus, you're ready to go. You're ready to go then and enter some of these classes, so you're not already behind when you step on campus. So I know Rachel's done some of these builds here in Montana. We now have finished doing all the 4 federally recognized tribes in Idaho, and we're going back to revisit 2 of those tribes here in a little bit. So those are some of the things I've done, at least through K through 12. When I look at higher education, We constantly have students that come onto campus, and quite often they ask me to give them a presentation. And so I thoroughly enjoy giving presentations, and one of the ones I really enjoy doing is liquid nitrogen ice cream. What does it tell them about science? That liquid nitrogen is cold and tasty, okay? But it really grabs their attention. Okay, it looks, it's really flamboyant. You got liquid nitrogen flowing out all over the place, and they really enjoy just that aspect of it. And it's really trying to give them this idea of, well, there are some fun things that I can do, and perhaps this is an area that I can go into. So the other things that I've worked with as in higher education, and one of the things I really want to start is a summer bridge program. Now, I know there's a Bridges program here, and it's for those that are in tribal school and then start here at the university. But I think also important is those that are transferring straight from high school to being a freshman here on campus. I went through a summer bridge program at Stanford, and it helped me immensely. It helped me kind of understand a little bit what's going to be expected of me once I come onto campus. If I was behind a little bit in some of my academics, kind of helped me catch up a little bit. It helped me build a community on campus, because I was housed with other freshmen from all over the country, and I already knew them before I stepped onto campus. And I was introduced to the other fellow Native faculty and staff, and we were just ready to go. And most of us that attended that camp, we stayed together all 4 years, and it was great. And I think that's an important thing, especially for Native students, is to build that community, to build that family on that campus, because you're going to be away from family, and being away from family is difficult. So if you can have a family here that you can call your own, that you can lean on, and that you can ask questions, and in which you can feel comfortable, then that is very important. So I'm very much looking to, wherever I happen to be, to start these type of programs. I think these summer bridge programs are tremendously important. So that's kind of a little bit of my background. So let me talk a little bit, and I'll try to keep it real little, a little bit about what my vision is then for being the director of the Native American Research Laboratory. Well, one of the things I know most definitely that I would need to start is I need to start building relationships. I built relationships in Idaho. I need to start building relationships in Montana. And what does that entail? Well, I need to go. I need to hit the road. I need to travel. I need to build that trust with the parents, with the elders, with the council, with the students, saying that if you come here, we will take care of your kids. We will help them in any way possible that I can to help them get through their undergraduate degree. But I know that's going to take a while. It always does, and that's fine. I understand how that goes. Trust isn't built in just a few days. It's not even built within a year. It may take several years, and I understand that. The other thing I understand too is, especially working in Native communities with Native students, it usually takes one student at a time. I know usually administration wants to see these big changes right away. They want to see 25 Native students doing these things and be really exciting. No, it may take 2 the first year, 4 the second year, 6 the third year, and you have to slowly build in these programs, and that I understand. So you have to build a personal relationship with these students, and so that once you kind of build a critical mass, then it's them going out and telling others, hey, you should come, and this is why. So I understand that does take a little while. I know that funding is going to be needed so we can fund our graduate students. I know that currently there is some funding, especially through the Sloan Foundation for our graduate students, but I know I have to bring in other funding. Again, I was the director of the Idaho Space Grant Consortium. I know very well the director of the Montana Space Grant Consortium and NASA EPSCoR, Angela Desjardins. So I would work with her to bring in money. I know how important it is to NASA to bring in diverse students into their scholarship and fellowship program. So I would work directly with her. I also have developed a relationship with NASA centers. So for students that want to go and do an internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, NASA Ames, these other areas, we can find a way for you to do that. Funding from NSF EPSCoR would also be key. And those would be to start out with, but you have to go to other areas too. How can you gain other funding with other federal agencies? And it's not going to just be one huge grant. It's probably going to be a little bit of funding here, a little bit of funding there, and that's fine. I'm used to writing grants. I'm also used to getting rejected and used to trying again, because it happens all the time. And I understand how that is. So writing, and I know faculty here know sometimes you just write the grant so you just get the reviews back, so the next time you write it'll be better. And so that's fine. That's fine. We just have to keep at it. So the short term, some ideas that I have. I think the Native students that we have here on campus, I've heard anywhere between we have 500 to 800. I guess it kind of depends on who you ask. That's a tremendous resource that we already have here on campus for the laboratory. So even if only 25 or 30 of you are in a STEM field, that's still a lot, and that's still great. You are actually a great resource in which to start out with to enter into graduate school. So how am I going to get you interested into graduate school? Well, I'm going to have to get you into the lab. So one of my ideas that I would want you for sure to do, especially undergraduate students, I want to get you into a lab somehow. So it most likely is going to start out with, well, I have to figure out who has opening positions for summer research in different laboratories. Do you have opening for a student? Do you have some funding for a student? And that's how it's going to start out with at first. And I'd probably have all of you apply and make sure that you apply into a current program. But then I'll have to bring in money too. Because I know it works even better, and I've seen this happen, is I have funding for 10 students. And so I walk up to a faculty member and I say, I have money for you to actually take on a student. I'll provide all of his stipend, and I'll actually give you a little bit money for incidentals into your lab while we actually take on the students. In most cases, the professors say, yeah, I'll have them work over the summer. So I need to get you into the laboratory. I need to make sure that you have that experience so you can have a little bit of a taste what graduate school is like. And I have no problem. In our department, we're a small department in chemical engineering. And quite often, our undergraduates are also our graduate students too, at least to the master's level. And so there's no reason for you to either go to graduate school here, which we would help facilitate, or if you're interested in going someplace else, most definitely. We'll help you however we can to find a position at another school. To get your master's here would be a tremendous, not only experience for you, but put you on the path for other things, for other opportunities. Now, to get students to that point, to graduate, I know that first semester and that first year is probably the hardest. I know at the University of Idaho, I think we have probably 50% of our students that leave after their first year, and that's tough. One of the areas, again, a summer bridge program would help with that. But I think another thing that would help is if we could organize, or I probably would organize, you are going to be required to attend study groups. I've seen this happen in other programs, and it works very well. That you're going to spend however many hours in a day, you check in and check out. And if you're in a certain class, we'll make sure we bring tutors. We'll probably do everything here as a central location, bring in those tutors to work with you to help you get through those classes. I know there's going to have to be some incentive to do that. So in some ways, I'm asking some of the tribal members, if you're giving scholarships to your students, or if you're helping them with housing, or if you're giving some kind of monetary need to your students, what would help us is if you kind of attached a little bit of a line in there that says, we will give you the money, but you must be a part of these study groups. So perhaps some sort of incentive for them to actually come and be a part of these study groups, and that would just help us tremendously. And the reason is okay, we have this reason for you to come, and it's tied to money, which I'm sure you would like. So just come every week. All you have to do is check in. We'll help you with whatever, either math or English, or if you're in organic chemistry or some of these, we'll make sure we have a tutor there available to you, and we'll work you through these classes, especially that first year. That first year is especially important. One of the things that we don't have in Idaho that I believe is a tremendous resource here is the tribal colleges. We do not have a tribal college in Idaho. But I think the tribal colleges here are going to be a tremendous resource. Mostly because, well, if we're looking for students to head into certain programs, well, they've already had 2 years of education, and in some cases, maybe even more, before they can step onto campus. I know that's also going to mean developing a relationship with those tribal colleges as well, and again, that's fine. That's something that I would look forward to doing, hit the road and talk face-to-face to look at these areas. And so again, that's a tremendous resource, and if we can work in as many of the tribal colleges as we can, have them enter in STEM fields, then that would be great. Once you're in graduate school, we're also working on, I've worked with Ed a little bit on this, and believe me, some of these ideas are not just my own ideas. Ed and I talk a lot about different ways to keep students both in undergraduate and graduate school, so I want to make sure that he gets some of the credit too. He's pretty smart, So I want to make sure that he gets some of this credit as well. But one of the things that we're trying to start is maybe a multi-institutional graduate program. So in other words, we would have special agreements made with University of Idaho, or maybe Oregon State, University of Alaska, perhaps another one, somewhere in the Northwest, so that, for example, if you are an undergraduate here, you get your master's in this program. Hopefully, then we'll have an arrangement that you can perhaps get your PhD you can stay here, that's fine, we can work with you here, but if you're interested in going someplace else for a little while, perhaps Oregon State, perhaps the University of Alaska, perhaps the University of Idaho, well, maybe that's an opportunity for you to kind of step out of your boundaries for a little bit, out of your comfort zone, look at something else and experience that, and then we would then have you then come back in some form or another. Now, I know there's a big push to have more Native faculty on campus. And really one of the best ways to do that is, as you all know, is to grow your own faculty. So for me, I have no problem. If you want to stay here, master's program to get your PhD, well then go ahead and we'll try to then fit you somehow into an academic program on campus. Or even better, come here through your master's, go to Oregon State, for example, for your PhD. Well then you have that much more breadth and more experience, so that if there is an open faculty position, you'd be a prime candidate for that position. Other areas that are, of course, important would be like the American Indian Graduate Center, SACNAs, ACEs. Those would be some areas in which we could also draw upon for their resources. So that's kind of the short term. Long term, what do I see us doing? Oh, I have some exciting things. At least I think they're exciting. But it's going to take a while. And again, I understand some of these things take a while. So as we did in Idaho, we just need to build this pipeline. So to get back to the junior high students, maybe even earlier to high school, continue to work with the high school students, elementary students, to get them interested into STEM. And again, it's not to necessarily have them all come here. We will come. I will find a way to see if we can come out and work with your kids, work with your teachers, work with whoever would want us to come. We will come and find a way to do these programs there. Again, we just need more interest, more of these kids in these STEM fields. And what better way is to have some of us here, both students and faculty, to come and show you, hey, these are the things that you can do. These are the things that are exciting if you remain in the STEM field. The other area that I think that what we need to do later on with the research laboratory is, to me, I think it would be important if we created a place or a center where if the tribes have a question or concern that is important to their community, that we would then look at that here. We would have our students then look at those problems, those projects, and we would be that first point of contact to look at those in the Native American Research Laboratory. So let's say you have a concern with the water, for example. What they're doing up there upstream, how is that affecting our water? Well, we would have then people working on that. So we would be that point of contact. We would set up a project, we put a graduate student on it, we get some interested faculty in that area, and we would work on that problem, and we would look into it. Of course, there's some logistics, there's going to be some funding that we're going to have to work on. The students still have to go through the normal thesis and PhD process, but there's no reason to think that we can't have those projects be based in the communities. And I think that would be an exciting thing to do. From what I understand also about this position is the Native American Research Laboratory, there wasn't necessarily just intended just to be one on campus. One was supposed to be the start, and then there were supposed to be others on campus as well, in different programs, in different departments. For example, there could be a Native American Research Laboratory in the forestry, or perhaps in these other areas, and why not? Why couldn't we then be the start to start these other research laboratories in other areas? So an example would be, let's say we had a student, went through the PhD program, is a prime candidate in one of the other programs. They have an open position. Now they're the director of their own NARL facility within that department. And so they can start their own research in that area. They can start their own expertise and have their own students then work there. Because I know it's going to happen. This is a big project. And to have one director focus on all of STEM on campus throughout the entire state, that's going to be difficult, especially in the long term. But we can be that start. So it'll start, it would start, for example, with me. But then we'd grow others. We'd have others begin their own NARL research facilities on campus, and then we would be the national model for others that are trying to begin it throughout the state. Another thing that we could do, another thought too, is we can be that spot. Let's say there's a native faculty, not quite yet faculty member, but they got their PhD somewhere, and they now need to do like a postdoc, or they need just a place to kind of work on some of their grants and work on some of their papers. Well, this would be a perfect place. We would bring them on like a research scientist. We'd give them maybe, there's a few models. One of the models could be, well, I'm going to give you 3 months of funding. You have to actually come up with the rest of your funding, and you work on your papers. You work on bringing in extra funding. And after 2 or 3 years, then you're ready to go. We're ready to send you out, either send you out or keep you here, perhaps. But we would be that stopping place where we have a native PhD student doing their postdoc here. We're grooming them so that they can go out and become faculty members at other places. Again, this is all long-term. This is going to take 10 years. This is going to take 15 years, maybe. But we got to start. We need to start somewhere, and I think this would be a good place to do that. So I know I've taken up a lot of your time. I tend to talk quite a bit. Sorry the stories sort of stopped too. But I also want to make sure I leave time for you all if you have any questions. So my last slide that I have on here. So this is back. I'll get it. So this is another view of the Hogan. So this is the front view in here. So you can kind of see the inside down here. So you see the stove there in the middle and kind of beds going around the outside. And this is my grandmother and grandfather, Shanella. Fortunately, grandfather died about 5 years ago, but grandmother's still doing quite well. Again, she's moved into a trailer by now, and she has one of my other aunts that's helping her out. But if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Questions? Any questions for Dr. Thomas? Yeah, right here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bill Swinney. I'm an instructor at Silver Student College, and I'm also the AMP liaison. Are you familiar with that program?
Yes, actually, we're at the University of Idaho as part of your program.
That's what I was going to ask, is if you've had any interactions with Art Taylor over there, my counterpart?
Art Taylor or Steve Martin? Or is it both?
Steve Martin.
Yes, yeah. I have worked with Steve Martin with our AMP students. I come in periodically on their meetings. For example, when I do the computer builds, we try to make sure we have some AMP students come along with us to help us with those computer builds. He and I talk quite a bit on what type of programs that we can do with those AMP students. So yes, I have been. Yes.
Any others? Question here? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I have a comment.
Yes.
I really like what you had to say for your short-term goals and the long-term. I think that's just great as a staff from the university.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Any others back there?
I just wanted to commend you and thank you for coming into our campus and for your interest in us as Native American students and for the forethought that you put into developing this plan for NARL. And I especially want to, as you guys are probably bored with, but I want to commend you for the diligence that it took to get to where you are now, that we really appreciate role models in Indian country and to, I think we learn so much, even if it's in this brief interaction from, about possibilities. And so I want to thank you for those possibilities, and I want to thank you for what you went through to get to where you are and to consider us for this position. The other thing that I wanted to mention is you just touched on so many points and so many questions that maybe a lot of us have had about, the future of NARL. And although I'm nowhere near as eloquent as Mr. Tatsy or Mr. Wilson or Mr. Grant, there was one little niche that I kind of had a question about, and that was, so I can't address anybody else, but I can address my story. And coming from the Blackfeet Reservation and dropping out in the 9th grade and then raising my 4 kids on my own and then, going to BCC, which these tribal colleges are just such a huge stepping stone for us. But, a lot of us don't have the money to even drive, to buy gas to drive across the street. So we stay at the tribal college level and, do a couple of AAs or AS degrees in 2 years, do a couple more, work for a year. And, we can never just kind of make that transition to getting a home and buying a vehicle or the gas money to get down here. And I hear you addressing high school students, and, that's awesome, and in junior high and in undergrads, but I was just wondering what you might be thinking about to increase that pipeline for people to get here. And then, for example, with my story, once I got here, I was a jack of all trades, but, master of none. And so I came, at a huge disadvantage, and I can see 3 or 4 people in this room alone that really helped me a lot as far as, the first year 5 deaths in my family. Dr. Swain helped me through that. Second, third year, son with hantavirus, Dr. Lobnow helped me with that. And just still being able to catch up or maneuver the politics of academia. And I'm just wondering, so I had to go MIS because I really didn't have a concrete foundation in any given thing. But also, it wasn't that I had to go that way, it's that I wanted to look at a problem at home. And that was the atomic waste that was potentially buried from Hanford in 1961. And so in order to do that, there was just such a good family of people here that helped me develop that interdisciplinary master's. And now then the next step is to go on to a PhD, but obviously I don't have the background in just chemistry or just Native American studies or just biomedical sciences to do a full-up PhD, so I'm doing the interdisciplinary. And I know that there's a lot of support here on this campus for that, but as Indian students, we really need champions that can traverse that for us and help us, with that respect to get to that PhD. And I guess I'm just wondering if you've thought about that MIS and IIP perspective and how you might consider supporting us so that we can do these projects that tie directly back to home, like our umbilical connected to home. We always want to find out how we can, lower the rates of cancer or, help with the water quality or fracking or...
Well, I think one of the main ways, well, first, again, if there's a student that comes from a certain community and they know some of the problems that happen on there and they're looking to go into graduate school, well, if they can kind of help formulate, like when you go for your PhD, you have to formulate your own topic quite often. So if you can formulate a topic and we can find you an advisor, and I kind of would help in that process, help find you a specific advisor that you would then have to help oversee that project. Now, I know it's not going to be directly tied to what they're doing, but if he could at least have some expertise in that area to kind of help you guide you through that process, if we hook you two up together, then that would be a tremendous research project. And I think one of my roles, too, is I would most likely be on your committee as well to help in that process. What am I signing myself up for? I don't know, because we could have 30 graduate students, and I don't know if I could be on 30 committees, but maybe. At least at first, and I can see how that is. That's why hopefully we'll have other directors on campus, so they can also be part of those committees more in those areas. And really, in terms of the money, I know that's rough, but I know that there's money out there to help with some of these issues. We may have to work directly with your tribe as well. If there's some way that they can help, some federal money. I'm just thinking specific for gas. Is there a way to get you money for gas? Can I tell National Science Foundation, hey, we need money for gas? Well, maybe if they allow me to do that, then that's fine. If I can use federal money for gas, then that would be great. However, what will happen though once you're on campus, at least in my opinion, is you're going to have to then work for that money in one way or another. It's not just going to be all. It'll be enough for you to get started, but we're going to have weekly checkups. Are you progressing the way that you're supposed to go? And if you're progressing fine, then there'll be no problem. The funding that we have for you will continue. But like I'm thinking for like the undergraduate students, we want to make sure that they're progressing through those classes, that they're coming to the study groups, and we want to make an incentive for them to come. And I think that incentive will be, we have the money for you for your housing and for your meals, but you have to come to these study groups before we give them to you. So there's going to be certain milestones that we'll set to make sure that you get through whatever your project happens to be, especially on the graduate level. And so for you specifically, Kim, I don't know.
Yeah, not specifically, it was more of a big story, but just for people who come in at that, because there are a
Well, and really, I think this person should be that first stop, right? Whether I'm the one who's going to directly solve the problem, I don't know. But if I can at least be that person who's, okay, well, let's go look. Let's see what it is out there. At least I think the director should be that one person that kind of goes out, okay, let's go look at this department, or let's go look at this program. Is there some way that they can help you with what you're trying to do? So at least there's somebody you can come to and says, well, I might not have the answer, but at least I will come with you to go and look to see if we can find the best answer that we can.
Question here? Go ahead.
Sort of comment, thank you for being, since the plan as a candidate through SNARL, and also recognize the search committee for finding candidates such as yourself. We talked about topics. If we can find a way to dissolve plastic on barbed wire fences, that would be a research study that that's an environmental concern, the wind and plastics. That's, if you don't account for how we can keep our reservation beautified, but with all the plastics on fences. It's an issue. What we can do about stuff like that. You talked about the atomic waste back in time. There's a certain community back there of high cancer, results in the people, in their bodies. In Wind River, the uranium mines, they talked about that down there, high cancer rates of disease down there, cancer, perhaps based upon uranium mining in the past. The cleanliness of the water, the fracking issue that's happening on our reservations for oil development, not just on our reservation, but Fort Bercel down there. These types of, but you cover so many areas, as you was covering these areas, these questions in my mind are just getting erased. But I like the thought of you, that teacher attitude of seeing somebody who's struggling and facilitating that learning rather than teaching something to that student that you think has to be taught to, but recognizing the problem. I see that in character, and I appreciate that fact there. But there's all those issues, like in that collaborating with the reservations locally with Montana, and we have an international tie with Canada too, or as the Blackfoot tribe does. But there's some, in the sense of our ecosystem of the wolves, the grizzly bears, the local populations, those things, the impact of that. Those are types of studies that are not just health issues, but they're safety concerns, to be addressed, and the impact that it has on, limiting our children's exploratory. We sort of become a safety net. We don't want them to go out and brush no more in trees no more, because there's too many bears and too many dangers out there for them, or whatever. Mountain lions now too. They even built a big fence around the boarding school I used to go through around that Browning, because they're afraid of allowing students out of this environment where, as before, why should we enclose ourselves within a small area? We need to explore out with it, especially for young children.
So if we can get the bears to eat the plastic, maybe that would be helpful.
These are just thoughts, but I appreciate your thoughts, and I enjoyed your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Question here, and then right behind you.
Okay, so I sort of have a two-part question.
Sure.
You were talking about outreach to mostly local stuff. Seeing as you're doing that, how have you or will you reach out to your own people, seeing as we have plenty of issues down here as well? And the second part, seeing as that's far in the future, how do you plan on, getting more diversity in the labs? And we do have a lot of international students now. How have you helped with us at home? I'm very curious.
And that is something I have struggled with as well, because I am so far away, right? So there's a few things I'm able to do and a few thoughts that I have. One of these is I would love to take a sabbatical and go teach at Navajo Technical College one of these times, and just be there for a year and just offer different programs that they have down there. But I am somewhat limited from where I am. And so because I don't have that close proximity to my people, I reach out to the people, First Nations people that are around me. So if I can't if I can't get to them directly, well, I'm going to help where I am. So I think in some ways that's somewhat helpful, especially being in some of these areas, because I am tribally neutral, right? So I can go on to, if I was a Shoshone Bannock and I went on to the Shoshone Paiute Reservation, there might be an issue. But being Navajo, there's not as much of an issue for me to do that, to go down there. And I imagine the same thing would be true here. So I could probably walk on to the Crow Reservation and be okay. Whereas maybe another tribe within Montana, there might be some friction. Or there might be this idea, oh, no wonder why there's so many Salish at Montana, because the director's Salish, those sort of things. Well, I don't run into as many issues. But I would very much like to be with my own people. But because of the geography, it is difficult. But the other good thing that I've noticed is, well, there's Navajos everywhere. So, so I have been able to find a few and been able to connect with them and to work with them. In fact, on one of the slides we have on there on our computer build, we have a Navajo named Rudy. And so I've worked with him quite a bit, and he's been a great resource as well.
Even with your long-term goals, you didn't say much about reaching out past the local community.
And that would be, yeah, definitely. So we would be open to whomever. But the first, in the short term, we'll have to work what's nearby, what's geographically close. But what I'm talking about for later on, like if we have a Native faculty that's looking to kind of begin their research, that could be from all over. I would love if a DNF from University of Arizona got their PhD and is looking for a faculty position, but just kind of needs to keep on. Well, come here. We'll help you. We'll help you be a part of a research faculty to help develop your papers and for your research. So yes, in the beginning it'll be local, but then we will expand as the critical mass begins here, and as word of mouth gets around about what we're doing. Then we'll welcome those from other tribes and from other areas. And I very much would like to have some of our people come here.
So right now, all of us that are from the map are just kind of out of luck because they can reach us?
Well, no. So that isn't what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you're not out of luck. If you come here, of course I'm going to help you, no matter where you are, what tribe you're from. But it's going to take me a little while to actually go out there to these other places. It took me a little while to go to the 4 tribes within Idaho. I worked on the 2 that were close, the Nez Perce and the Coeur d'Alene. It took me a long time to finally get down to the Shoshone Paiute and to the Shoshone Bannock. And it just takes time. You kind of build where you are, and then you spread out. But we had students from all over that came to our campus, and we work with them. I think what I'm trying to say is, of course, you're not unwelcome. There are programs for you. But when we're talking about how to expand the program, I'm talking about how to expand small and then reach out from there.
Question behind, and then over here.
I have 2 questions that are unrelated. So first of all, I'm a graduate student, and I've been a part of summer bridge programs, and I've been a mentor, and I've done the computer builds and whatnot. And it takes a lot of time. And as a graduate student now, I would be afraid to choose you as my mentor because you would not really be around. How will you deal with that? Because in order to mentor your graduate students, you need to be in the lab, but I mean, to do outreach is great too, so I don't know.
No, that's actually a very good question, because even in the position I have now, I travel a lot, which is hard for me, one, just being away from my students, but mostly being away from my family. But we still make sure that we keep those weekly meetings, those contacts that we can with each other to see, okay, where are you now? How are you progressing? And yes, I will probably be gone and be pulled in like 4 different directions, but you need to graduate. We need to get you through. So you're one of the. If there was a priority list, you would be high on that priority because you are my student. There may be times, yes, it is difficult to find me, but if we schedule times, then for sure we know that we'll connect during those weekly meetings that we then have.
Question back there.
I just got some comments and, being a member of the tribal council, and then I'm also a full-time student here. Hopefully, I hope I graduate at the end of this semester.
Excellent.
But, I've been here ever since for 4.5 years as a student. And in that 4.5 years, I never heard an oral. I never, so, I like what you said about, okay, let's take care of the tribes here in Montana. It's not that I have anything against anybody anywhere else, but, by God, this is Montana. This is, where this reservation, or where this campus was. This is Salish ground. I'm Crow. And, I'm glad that there's somebody that actually, this guy said Blackfeet. I stand corrected. Well, this is Blackfeet ground. So the Blackfeet had this whole territory here, I guess, and, and then I'm glad that there's somebody that does, that actually means something to somebody, knowing that, okay, there's a native group here, let's try to get some of them people here. That kind of really, I really appreciate that. You also touched on tutoring. I've talked before about my struggles with tutoring. I'm a councilman, I'm a father, I got a wife, I got kids, I got a high school kid, and actually trying to find the time to, shucks, I graduated from high school over 20 years ago, and then when I first came to school, I didn't even know how to use a scientific calculator, so, I struggled. I still am struggling, and when I do have the time to come to the math lab for tutoring, I hardly ever get any help because, it's just full of students. And it would be nice to have a, like what you said, like a group of native people, tutoring native people, and, not only in math, but like physics and stuff. And along my journey, I've been, my education, I call it a journey. Started out, and then I've actually, coming here, it's not, it hasn't all been positive. There have been obstacles in my way. I've actually been discouraged by people that were there supposed to help me. And these people discouraged me, and I about quit, but I'm glad that, I have a strong faith and it kept me in there. I said, okay, if getting a degree was easy, everybody would have one, and so then, keeping that in my mind and then being firmly planted in, my culture and in the white man's world, you got to straddle it like, you got to keep one foot in your own ways and then another foot because that's how it works. There's no way to go back 100 years ago and start eating buffalo. There's just no way. You got to look into the future. And I also liked what you had to say about integrating, bringing these young kids into the STEM fields. Elementary students. That's where to get them. Like myself, what got me into being into that, I've always been a rock hound. I say, hey man, look at this cool rock. Where, I don't know how did it get this way, or where did it come from, or, So now, I kind of know what's going on there. Hey, this came from over here, or this is, it's a well-rounded stone. It came from quite a ways away. Stuff like that. I learned all that here, and also as native Montanan, each of us. Representative from the Blackfeet, they're looking for oil. Each tribe has their own development, but we need to think to get young people educated as chemists, as engineers, as biologists to say, okay, let's look 50 years down the road. It's hard to look at. Right now, being on the tribal council too, it's we have really high unemployment. We have all these social problems, the alcoholism, drug abuse, all these bad things that are happening. And it's really easy to get, a check for, here's some money, go and do something, hire some people, but that money's only going to last a long time. And then if you do find oil, by God, you can't drink it, What's going to happen when all your oil's gone and then you ruin your water? So we need to have Native American scientists go back home and help our people. And, I also like your sense of humor. You're a funny guy. And I got a question. I guess, have you ever been to like Caravan East, Midnight Rodeo, or Blue Spruce?
Maybe. Maybe. That is a possibility. That is a possibility. I won't divulge much, but maybe.
Any other questions? Back. Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I have a couple of comments. First of all, when we started these interviews, my primary question that was about the pipeline, and there's no reason to ask you that question because you understand the pipeline so very well, and I applaud you for that. And I also want to say that we have a precedent here in that we've had a marvelous example from the Northern Cheyenne where they send their higher ed person over here, and the students getting their money that month is tied to their showing up to see her, to talk about the progress and so on. So, and they have one of the highest retention rates because of that. And so I think that your pipeline presentation is just full of sound best practices. And so I really appreciate that. But another question I have, because I'm interested in making the connections between the local and the global. I know that with these two young ladies, there was already a kind of tyranny of expectations, like stay in the lab, take care of our needs, go far into Indian country, and there is a tyranny of expectations with this job. Be everything to everyone and be every place. So my question takes you not to outer space, but almost. What about global indigenous? The university has globalization as one of its 5 goals, connecting and having all the students, like 60% or more, have an international experience. So that's question number one. The second one is, what does the University of Montana have that the University of Idaho doesn't have for you?
So for the first question about global, I will say personally I don't have much experience in that. I've heard some of our other, especially Native students and staff that have gone on these experiences like to South America and worked with the indigenous tribes in there. And they tell me quite often that this is important, that it really was important to them to be down there and they would like to see some of their students go down there. So I have at least heard that that's also an excellent experience, but I personally do not have experience with that. In terms of question number 2, what does the University of Montana have the University of Idaho doesn't have? It's this. It's the Native American Research Laboratory. University of Idaho does not have that yet, I think. I know Ed's working on that, and we've kind of gotten some pushback, but it's already here. It's a unique position. It's something that the director can sort of make his own, because what model is he going to follow? Well, there isn't one. Well, you can kind of put your own imprint on what you would like to see in this program, and that's a tremendous opportunity. You can be one of the first, one of the models for others in the nation, and that to me is the primary thing that this campus has that the University of Idaho does not have yet.
Question, let me see, there, and then here. Okay, go ahead.
I know that there's been lots of talk around students, and I just want you to shift your perspective on the student for a minute. And I think of the non-native faculty on this campus as being students as well. I know in different departments on this campus, I was thinking of almost like a permeated membrane is how scientific I'll get for you.
That's excellent.
Of kind of the ends with Native education and just kind of bringing who we are culturally into those departments, teaching the faculty to get the support for the students and stuff. But in STEM, from what I understand, that's not there yet. I mean, that's barely just starting. So if you were to come here, have you had an experience like this on your campus, or do you have any thoughts on maybe how you could start trying to educate the other STEM faculty to support our students here and start kind of building the roads in that way?
And I have had some experience with that. And the primary reason, as with anyone, is again, you build a relationship with these. And so, they know me. They know I'm at least in my opinion, a pretty good faculty member on campus. They see that even though I'm indigenous, I have that I'm different in that respect, but I'm also a faculty member. I also do the same thing that they do. I have research, I have students that I have to teach, but I have this other aspect as well. And so I'm able to build a relationship with them, and then I can kind of talk to them a little bit more about, well, this is what our students face. This is some of the issues that you might not have thought about, that maybe in the back of your mind when you have some of our Native students, you can keep these in mind as well. So I've had quite a few connections throughout campus, not only with faculty, but also with staff, and also with those like in the facilities department. And I'll tell you, one of the best ways that I made most of my connections on campus was playing noon ball. So this is faculty and staff. Hopefully there's a noon ball here on campus, because it's one of the most fun things that I enjoy. And it's essentially a bunch of faculty and staff to get together and play basketball during lunchtime. And so I have made so many contacts with a whole bunch of different people on campus just simply through that. Playing with them, them seeing me, talking to them about their problems. And now I really feel that if I have an issue, for example, if my heat is turned off, I know exactly who to call. I don't have to go through, I know who to call. I say, hey, the heat's turned off. I have that relationship with them. And then sometimes they come to me and says, well, we noticed that, there's these Native students that are looking to work with us. And it's like, well, yeah, let me tell you about it. I already have that relationship with them. That's another one of those things that just takes time, and it'll just take a little while. But first, it'll just be with me working with them personally.
Question here and then here.
When you were talking about the short-term and long-term goals for the lab, I heard a lot about recruiting new students, but there are staff already working in the lab, like current students. I would like to know, I am among them, and I would like to know what are your immediate plans for the lab, like for the current students.
Well, the most immediate plan is make sure you get graduated. I want to make sure that you are not only on that path, but you will be done in whatever, hopefully the short timeline that you want. Like, for example, how much longer do you have?
I got here in
January. PhD in January. So we want to make sure you're out in at least 4 years, hopefully 3 years from now. Did you already have your master's?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully 3 years from now. And so that's my immediate goal, is those of you that are already here in your graduate programs, you need to graduate. And we want to make sure that we set up plans to make sure that you have things turned in. I know how it is, especially if you're doing experiments. Students tend to think that this is my final year, I'll do experiments and I'll write my thesis, and it's going to take me 3 months. It is not going to take you 3 months. If you're running experiments, things that you would never even dream of would go wrong. And they do, and they will. It'll take you at least a year to get those experiments done, to interpret the data, and to just maybe even start writing that thesis. Even the thesis takes multiple variations. So I just want to make sure that those of you that are a part of the program right now, you understand what the steps are going to be. Do you have your committee together? Have you done your preliminary exam? Have you even talked to your committee, given them maybe some of your work so they kind of have an idea where you are? We can kind of talk to them early so that they can suggest now what experiments you should do, as opposed to you give them your thesis at the end, they say, oh, you need to go back and now do these. We want to make sure that you are the ones that graduate first. So my very short-term plans would be with you all. We need to make sure that you all finish and get done.
You're next.
So it's kind of a combination of different comments I've heard tonight about, what needs to come off of some of these smaller reservations, but, just the reservation in general, a lot of problems that come along with being raised, out there. My question would be, how do you plan on providing a support system, especially for those of us who are more culturally traditionally involved with our Native traditions? How do you plan on supporting that? Or should an issue come up, how do you plan on being there?
In a non-academic sort of way. Well, again, we just need to make sure with all the natives that are on campus, we have that community already built here. That we make sure that we have either events or we have meetings where you all are talking to each other. And so that if certain things happen, I think the most powerful way to handle some of these issues is for students to work with other students. Now, I could probably be a sounding board, but I think you're going to find more familiarity and more connection with a fellow student than you would with perhaps faculty and staff. So if we can build the students to kind of rely on each other and work each other through those, I think that would be more powerful, one of the more powerful things that could help you work through these times. So you have a fellow student who's also traditional from the reservation, but maybe they're from a different reservation, but it's pretty close. They have similar ceremonies, or they have, we know that you have to be gone during certain times because there's an event coming up, a family event. Well, if you rely on each other, that'll be even more helpful than if you're looking out to some of the staff and the faculty. We will help facilitate that and help you any way that you can, but we think with your interpersonal relationship with your peers, that'll be even greater.
Any others? Let me see. One here, yes. Go ahead.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Thomas, for coming to our campus. And I had the opportunity to talk with you, and I'm very grateful to just had some time to talk about your interest in science and as far as the Native American Research Lab's future would go. My question is, what would your plans be with regard to health disparities research, and how we could build towards developing a stronger capacity to really engage in health disparities research in Montana?
Okay, so this is of course way out of my field, being a chemical engineer. However, in a lot of the conversation I've had, especially with a certain student that was here at one time, I know she's very interested in this area. So perhaps that would be maybe one of the first places we can establish another NARL, another director, to be in kind of that field and to be in your program, in your department. So they would be now the ones that would concentrate on those. They would be the ones then to kind of concentrate then on that. Whereas maybe if whatever department I'm housed in, at first I can facilitate and help, but I think what would really help if I brought up someone else that now is as an additional faculty or as an additional director, or maybe you're the director now, so you now have your own laboratory then that you then establish, and then you can then focus then on those issues. And we will of course work collaboratively, but you have your own lab space, and you would kind of be the next NARL director in that area.
Well, is the director of health disparities, then you should have some similar to that.
Yes, right there. I kind of felt like the last time I heard something from another candidate, it was kind of along the lines of if my school didn't fit, that there wasn't going to be anything forced. And I guess what I heard from what you see, what I'm hearing your vision of this lab is as a broader vision of looking for other possibilities. I heard you mention the College of Forestry and Conservation as one, of course being my alma mater school. I appreciated that. But so is that essentially what you're saying is maybe you wouldn't come in and necessarily turn this lab into a chemical engineering lab, which is obviously be the easiest thing for you to do, but you would maybe see it as a broader sort of platform from which to establish a number of research centers. Is that kind of what you said before?
Yes, because I know that I'm going to have to adapt personally. I know there's not an engineering program on campus. There's most definitely not a chemical engineering program on campus. So I'm going to have to adapt to what is already here. You said that would probably be the easiest thing. It would only be easy for me. It wouldn't be easy for anyone else. What would be easier is if then I found my own, I guess, niche within the community. How best can I fit? And it might be in multiple areas, and that's fine. But really the focus is to make sure we get these students through, that they find where they're most comfortable, the type of research they want to do. I'm not going to force them to do chemical engineering research. I'm going to I'm going to encourage them to make sure they're doing research that they are most interested in, to find a faculty member that they are most interested in, and I'll be the one facilitating those connections. And again, if they have an issue, they can come to me. One of the other ideas I think we should have is I'll have all of our graduate students meet either once a month or once a week and just talk. What issues are you going through? What can we help you to? The other thing I like to see is actually have the students give presentations to each other to let us know what it is that you're doing on this other part of campus that I know nothing about, so that another student sees, okay, this is everything that's going on campus. And if they happen to be going out to give a national presentation, well, practice on us. We'll be there. We'll give you feedback so that you'll be ready to go if you give it to the American Chemical Society, for example, if you're giving a talk. So yes, I'm not going to, as much as possible, I'm not going to force people to fit me. I'm the one that's going to have to change. I'm the one that's going to have to adapt. And the more and more I'm beginning to realize, or getting ideas on how I can do that.
Any other questions? Getting late in the evening. Yes, go ahead.
Kind of comment / question, and you know, I'm an exercise nerd. If you were going to go and do some presentations in the lab, I'd be there, man. You know, I'd even bring some pizza.
Okay, what's your name? Write that down. Over there, make sure.
And noon ball, it's on, man. You know?
I may look old, but...
You know, I enjoyed your presentation. I just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for getting it. You get it. You know, I think it's important to say that, you know, we're represented very well with female faculty here, Indian female faculty, but a male Indian faculty member, we don't have. We don't have that role model here, and we need that. I think it's critical right now, and you're coming in at a great time. I just, you know, I really don't even have much to add in terms of, you answered everything with outreach into community, with mentorship with students, with facilitating relationships. See, a lot of people don't get that. Indian people are relational. I want to trust you, and you want to trust me. See, research, traditionally, you know, the Western researchers come into the reservation to say, this is what you Indians need to do. And you know, and I was telling Ed about that today, you know, those interventions failed miserably. And it's somewhere along the lines they got it where, oh, well, if we include the Indian people, hence community-based research, if we ask them and include them from start to finish, then the interventions finally started to become successful. So I mean, what I'm getting at is that you get that, and I think that's critical, and it needs to be said. And I really love the fact that you know, not only do you understand that once that pipeline is introduced, it's going to become so big that you're going to need to branch out. You know, and one department you missed was health and human performance.
I'm sure there's a lot of programs that.
But so my question is this. So I've just been listening to kind of the different questions and whatnot. And one thing that popped into my mind was that you're a chemical engineer. And with your talk today, I didn't understand one word you said. My question was, can you repeat slides 2 through the end? Since there isn't no chemical engineering program here, I think that's going to kind of become a question or whatnot. Have you done research on what is here and thought about the specific discipline or disciplines that you can transition to and, you know, teach and mentoring?
I had before I even came, but I learned so much more in my 2 days here about what is here and what people are doing. I have identified some researchers that I potentially I could collaborate with in terms of my own research. There's also been talk of, you know, maybe the College of Technology would be a good place to meet, because they're perhaps thinking of doing a pre-engineering program with the College of Technology, and that's something that I could also help with as well. So I've heard some possibilities. I don't have now a firm. I couldn't say yes or no. This is exactly the way it's going to be. I still think that needs to be worked out, but at least I'm encouraged to see, because I wasn't sure. You know, that was my big question. What is my fit? Am I going to be a good fit here? And both ways, you know, am I going to enjoy what I'm doing, but also I want to make sure I contribute. I don't want to be, the special Indian that we had to create this position for because we didn't know what to do with them, right? I want to make sure that I actually am able to contribute to whatever program and opportunities that there are out there. And so I do have now some possibilities, and we'll just have to work those through.
Any others? Okay.
Can I say one final thing?
Please do.
So, final thing I wanted to say is one, very much thank you. I learned a lot in these last couple of days for each one of you that took time to speak with me. All 72 of you, it seemed, according to my schedule that I had to talk to. But one thing that I learned is this is a very important position, and this needs to succeed. And whether it's me or someone else, it just, you need to make sure that the person that's in here will carry it on. Because you are being looked at. The National Research, the Native American Research Laboratory is being looked at by others. So I want to see this succeed. And again, if it's not me, that's fine. I hope it's someone else that will just take it beyond where you can even imagine. And I'm also hoping that, however this turns out, that we just continue. Just because I'm over across the mountain range, and just because I'm working with Ed, shouldn't deter you. Okay, we can continue on with whatever it is that we do. So I appreciate your time and taking time out tonight and staying to ask me questions. I greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
So that concludes candidate number 3. There's one more. We encourage you to attend if you can, and have a safe trip home. Thank you.